Myself Vaibhav. In today's session of Visual Jforex, I will be continuing with the demonstration of the algorithm development using the linear regression indicator block. So let's get started for the day. We will be straight heading away to the Visual Jforex board, which has been developed by the Dukascopy Bank SA to make our life easier. So far, we have done the instrument subscription here. The default instrument has been defined at USD JPY, and then to make sure that there is no parallel position open or any pending order there, the position amount has already been defined to 0. We have added the linear regression blocks as well, and to look at the price action, the get historical candles data, and to pinpoint the exact entry and exit points, the 10 seconds get historical candle is also there. Now, in today's session, we will be adding some conditions to the buy side. So far, we had defined this condition where we needed the last hourly candle to have closed above the linear regression value, and the candle prior to that should have closed below the linear regression value. And to make sure there is enough of price momentum, we had defined the BCD, that was the buy candle difference, and it needed to be more than at least 7 pips. And now I think we are almost set. Two more condition needs to be added. So let me get the if else statement. In this, we will be looking at the closing values of the last 10-second candle, and then we will compare it to the hourly price action. Okay, so here we are, and let us look at the chart also, how it will look like. And this is kind of a reminder. In prior session I had already explained it, so here I think the conditions will be in line with our requirement. We need to see that last hourly candle has closed above the linear regression value, and as I said earlier also, the prior candle should have closed below it. So somewhere here the execution might have happened. Now there are two scenarios. Either you can go for the market open, or otherwise you can also look for the pending open. So in that case you have to go for the order validity, and also the exact buy point, and that will entail us adding some further calculation expression to define the exact point, and then the calculation for the order validity as well. It can be as per your requirement. Even you can keep it for 1 minute, 1 hour, or even a whole day. That's not the problem, but we will have to keep it as per the optimum setup. And let us see. So first we will take into consideration the closing values here. So I will add the candle 17's closing value. So let me take it out from auto created variables, and here it is. Okay, the shift value, the look back period is of 2 for candle 18, and the look back period is of 1 for candle 17. And as I have said, we need, for the order execution to happen, the price to move just little above the closing value for the last hourly candle. And to make sure that's the case, we will be utilizing this 10 seconds data. The condition is that candle 18 should have closed below the candle 15's value, and for that let me take the closing value here of candle 18. So here it is, and now comes the closing value, candle close for candle 15. and this should be less than the second variable. So let me take again one more if block. Alright, first input less than second input, and then now comes the closing value, candle close for candle 17. So here is this first variable, first input value. So here we are mostly done with the setting up of conditions for the order execution. Now comes the important part of deciding whether to stick with the open at market or whether to go with the pending order. Let us take a look on the chart to see which one will be a better idea. You can work it out both ways, and I think the last series in which I was using the Kaufman's adaptive moving average, for that we had done the open at market. So maybe this time around let us go with the pending open, and it is not much difficult to build also. So we can just little more time will be needed, and then we will be able to use it. The buy candle difference BCD should be more than the minimum pip difference, and which we have set at 7 pips. This should be first input greater than second input. And now let me take the order block. Alright, and this will be the limit order, as we are looking at going for the placement of order below the market price. So that means we will have to take the limit order, and suppose if you want to keep it above the market price, prevalent price, then you will have to use buy stop, and you can do it by stop by bid or simply by stop. So there are always multiple ways to go around the same thing, and this should be first input greater than second input. Now we have to define these parameters. Here, as you can see, we have to fill these almost, let me count, 7 variables. And first we will have to look at the buy price. What can be the price when we have seen momentum? So our conditions, if the conditions have been fulfilled, then comes the defining of the price for execution of the order. And I think now suppose if we had gone in for the pending order, and if we had kept the buy price lower this time around, I think the order execution might not have happened. So it can work out both ways. Sometimes you might lose out on a good trading opportunity simply because the buy price, the execution price, is too far from the market price. And sometimes what might happen that your order gets executed at the prevalent price, and then the price moves lower, you get stopped out, and again it continues to rise. So that way can also it go. So there is no fixed way to go about this, and we simply have to rely on the statistical age here. Sometimes it will work out, and all we can do is to make sure that the probability is a lot more in our favor, and that's the only way to cut out the randomness. So what I will do, I will be using the Fibonacci ratios. Maybe whatever is the difference between the opening value and the closing value for the last hourly candle, we can take it into consideration, and then multiply it by around 38.2 percentage point, and to round it out we can use simply 40%, and that should be good enough. And for order validity, given the fact that we are working on the hourly time frame, I think maybe keeping the order validity T of around half an hour or even 1 hour should be good enough. And you can also always run the test on the historical data to see what are the optimum condition. If you don't really see that profitability is good enough, you can change it anytime. So for demonstration purpose, I will keep the order validity at half an hour. For that, let me take the calculation expression here. And now this will entail further calculations, and I think we will need to add quite a couple of these blocks. And also I have to define the exact buy point. So for that as well, I need to carry out the calculation. And I think 2 or 3 should be good enough. First thing first, let me define the buy entry point. So for that, I will be relying on the price action itself. I'm not going to define the values by myself. We will be simply looking at the price action and whatever it is telling us. If the momentum is strong enough, then that's better for us as well. And it will have more probability of going in our favor. So let's see. We will be taking the candle 15's candle closing and opening value difference. And I think we have already done this BCD's calculation, so we can use this BCD value and simply take the 40% of it for deducting 8 from the last tick price, as we are using the on tick as our start point. This will work fine. So what I will do here is take a look on the last tick price. So ticker price is what we are going to use, and here also you get 2 options. Either you can go with the tick bid or tick ask, and those who are well familiar, this is the case simply because there is spread. There is always the spread between the ask price and the bid price, and as a result of that you get 2 options to choose from. And given the fact that we are going to define the buy side, I think it will be better to use last tick bid, and from it I will deduct the candle difference. No. First, I will need to make it 40%, as we are relying on the Fibonacci ratios. And for that, this, and I will need to create a fresh new variable. Create new variable. You can name it anything you like to make it simpler, and it is based on Fibonacci ratio. So I will name it F BR. Okay, all right. And start value 0.4. So here it is, second variable. Now all we have to do is to get the value of our requirement A1 into A, and the result of the calculation will be the execution point for the placement of the order, and it will be by execution price. So I will write it BEP. We are creating again the new variable here, and I will have to now cut this flow out and join it here. Mostly I leave the space so that if you feel further conditions needs to be added, we always have the headroom to make any changes as we go along. Now this value which we have got after this calculation, again we will use the same to deduct it from the last tick bit as I said, and now this time around we will do A1 minus A2, and this is going to be BE. We have got the buy entry point now, BE, and let me take a look on the block. Okay, so here it is. I will use this result of the calculation here as an input value, and we will have to change this to buy limit. Alright, now comes the defining of other important variable, and slippage. For USD GPY, 2 pips of slippage should be good enough. You can keep it 3 pips, 5 pips, or even 50 pips, but I would never suggest that or recommend that. 2 pips should be good enough. And for defining the stop loss and take profit, you can make it dynamic. Suppose if you are working with the price action, or even now this is a series is simply dependent on the single indicator. Because of that, I have not been using the ATR, average true range. Otherwise you can make it dynamic using the ATR, and that makes our job simpler. And one more way to go around that is also relying on the difference between the closing value and the opening value, and maybe to use some proportion of it. You can use like 60% or even 100% of it as a stop loss, and to make sure that risk reward is in your favor, you can double it by maybe twice, and then you will get the risk reward ratio of 1:2. So this time around, I think keeping the stop loss of 25 pips for an algorithm which is going to work on an hourly time frame is going to be a bit too much. So I will cut it down. Maybe 10 pips should be good enough. Usually the ATR is of around 50 pips for the USD JPY, and 20% of the ATR is more than sufficient if the price action is strong and it is in our favor. And as I said, the risk reward ratio should also be in our favor. To make sure that is the case, I have changed the TP to 20 pips. Now one more variable needs to be defined, good till time, that is the order validity, and for that I will have to add one more calculation expression here, and okay, it is here. And those who are not well familiar with this platform, in 1 hour we get 3.6 million pips. So if we are going to define the validity for order at half an hour, we will have to multiply the 3.6 million by 50%, and that will be the order validity. So here I am going to create the two variables, and one is going to be OV, and start value will be 3.6 million. So pay attention to the number of zeros. 3600, 5 times 0. Okay, I think I have got it right, and if I haven't, I would like to. Okay, Yeah, it is right. This is going to be the second variable. First variable is going to be the last tick time, and here is the tick time. And as I said, we are going to keep the order valid for half an hour, and for that I will add one more variable here. Name is you can name it anyway. OVT should be good enough. Okay. So what we need to do now is multiply the A2 by A3 and the product. Then we will deduct it from A1 last tick time. Sorry, we will need to add it, not deduct it. So whatever is the last tick time, A1, we will add half an hour to it, and A2 into A3. Okay, order execution validity time. Uh, I think this will need to be changed. The data type should also match, and this is going to be in the long format. And I think this data type, I will change it. Okay. While defining these variables, we also have to make sure that data type matches the requirement, or make it simpler rather than defining the data type here. You can create the variable in the pending open block, and there you get the data type as per the default setup. So you don't really have to care about what is the data type. Otherwise, if you are defining it yourself, you always have to make sure that you have got the data type right. So here I will create a new variable. I will name it TT. Okay, and then we will use this variable created in the pending open to derive the value from this calculation which we have carried out in this block. Right, most of the things are looking right to me. If you happen to spot any shortcoming, you can always let me know. Okay, so that looks good. And with this, as I can see, we are almost done with the buy side. Uh, Now comes the moment of starting work with the sell side. And before we do that, we need to add some values. The cell execution point will need to be defined again, and also I will need to multiply the Fibonacci values as I have said, as I have done earlier. Again, I will multiply the SCD, cell candle difference, by 0.4%, and okay, so I have got this. And let me take that. and the variable FBR Fibonacci ratio is already here. So this time around the job is a lot simpler. A1 into A. So this is going to be our requirement for the price to shoot up on the higher side before the order gets executed. So whatever is the last hour's candle close value, we will add it. Now SCD MPR. Okay. Sorry for that call. Actually, I am on a trip, short trip, and this is from the reception. Let me take it. हेलो. हाँ बोलिए. हाँ हाँ. I will let you know in 10 minutes. Just give me some time. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Now let us resume. So where we were. Okay. We have done this. A1 into A2, and this is going to be the requirement for sell side execution. I will name this SEP, and then to make it a limit order, I will need to add this to the last tick price. So we will need one more calculation, and then I think we are mostly done. So I will retrieve the last tick price. This time around, we will use the last tick ask. While working with the buy side, we use last tick bid. For the sell side, we will use last tick ask. Sometimes when the volatility is too high, or if there is any sudden development during those circumstances, usually the spread widens, and we don't really want to suffer too much of losses if that's the case. And for that only, we have to be careful. A1 plus A2, and this is going to be our sell execution price, sell entry price. So I will simply name it SE. Now this has been defined, the order validity. We have already defined it. So let's start with the build of sell side, where we will need to add 6 conditions. And first I go to the chart to explain you the idea behind the execution. We need last level candle to have closed below the linear regression value. The regression value should be on the decline. So for that, we are going to do the comparison between the last hourly value to the value equivalent 4 hours back, and for that we are going to rely on the look back rate of 4. Okay, and the hourly candle with shift value of 2. should have closed above the linear regression value of that time. So we have defined these variables, and all we have to do is now correlate them. So let me take if else statement, logical components. The net is a bit slow, so it's taking more time. Okay, I got this. First thing first, linear regression should be moving lower. So let us take the linear regression values. First input and then second input. First input less than second input. And then comes the question of defining the correlation between price action and linear regression. And for that, we will have to rely on the output value of this get historical candle data, and I think we will first define using this candle 16, which has the lookback period at 2. That means it is retrieving the data 2 hours back. Okay, auto created variables, and it is candle 16. Okay. So here is the closing value, and we will compare it to the linear regression value of that point, not the current value. 2 hours have passed, so we have to go back in time and then do the comparison. And I think where it is, I had already added one more block. Okay, here it is. Shift value is 2. Pay attention to this, and this will be the second input value here. Okay, the closing value should have been higher than the linear regression value, and then the price action accelerated, and we saw the spurt in momentum, which resulted in the volatility shooting up more than 7 pips, and it was on the sell side. So here we are going to, okay, first input greater than second input. Now let us come back to the present, not exactly present. We will be retrieving the data for last hourly candle close and then compare it to the last hour's linear regression value. This close, candle close, okay, and shift value 1 is here. That means we have to use this output value line 10, and this time around the first input should be less than second input. Earlier the first input was greater than second input. Now I will add a couple of if else statements more. Okay, first input less than second input. Okay, we also need to make sure that there is enough of volatility, enough of sell side momentum, and for that I have already carried out the earlier calculation of figuring out the difference, and now let us go back there. Okay, CD is our desired value, and it should be more than the minimum pip difference. So where is the minimum pip difference? Okay, here it is. First input greater than second input. Now two more if else statements, and as I can see we are almost done. First input greater than second input. Alright. Now to pinpoint we'll need the precise execution point, and for that we have to shorten the time frame, and we will use the 10 seconds values and compare it to the hourly close value. Okay, so here we are. Closing value of the last hourly candle close, candle 15th, auto created variable again, candle close here. We are setting up it as a second input, so it's much easier to understand as well. And then the first input for both of these blocks will be the closing values of 10-second candle. So let me see where it is. Shift 1 and shift 2. Candle 17 is with shift 1, candle 18 is with shift 2. And for sell side, we need the candle 18 to have closed higher than the hourly candle close. So that means candles 18's value, closing value, should have been higher than the candle 15 candle close. And that means first input greater than second input. Whereas the candle 17, which has shift value, the lookback period at 1, it should close lower. That means price now after the closing it is moving lower, and this is okay. Candle 70, its close value, and all six conditions have now been defined. I got the flow wrong here. I will have to disconnect it and then again reconnect it. First input greater than second input, and then let me zoom out a bit and arrange these blocks. Okay, time to add the order execution block. Again, we'll zoom in. And I will connect this as well as C to multiple action. We are in the final moments of the session now, and before we sign off, all I need to do is get the order execution block right, components, trading components, pending open, and comes the question of defining these 7 variables for which we have done a lot of work already. So we straight away go to the data retrieval here. SE is going to be our sell side execution price, which is going to be about 40% of last candle closing and opening difference, and we will add it to the last tick price. Okay, so here it is. This will be sell limit order. Let us zoom in a bit. Default instrument will remain as it is. Trade amount. Trade amount you can change it anytime. I'm not doing any changes here. Slippage 2 pips should be good enough. Stop loss for the buy side and for the sell side, I will keep it the same, which is going to be 10 pips. Target price 20 pips. And the order validity, which has been defined already. So I will retrieve that data. And where it is TT. Okay. So everything looks good to me. And maybe during the next session when we will be working with another indicator, technical indicator, I will explain to you how we can make the sell side price, the stop loss price, and the target price more dynamic, even using simply the price action. So we will keep that for next session. And candle 18, I think let me check it out once. I'm feeling bit okay. Candle 17 closing value. I think I have overlooked it. Candle 17 is with the shift 1, candle 18 is with the shift 2. Okay, so that looks like an error of omission. It should be less, not more. First input less, and this is with the shift 2, so this should be greater. First input greater than second input. Okay. Now everything looks perfect, or you can say near perfect. You don't really like the term perfect. Okay, so with it, I'm done for the day. If you have any idea or any query, you can write to me in the feedback, and I would be more than happy to take the discussion forward. Thank you all for joining in. Do subscribe to the Dukascopy webinar channel to stay updated on the market developments. Goodbye.